Well, it was as ugly as it could have got. South Carolina falls to Missouri tonight, ending their 4-game losing streak. And in the process, there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions that people want to have answered. And hopefully we can be able to do that tonight on the GC Live Postgame Show. Welcome in, everybody, on this Saturday night. I wish the circumstances were a little bit better, but the bottom line is the Gamecocks fall to Missouri tonight. And they fall now to 5-3 on the year. Former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth will be joining me shortly. We are having some issues with the phones tonight. Intern Joe is not with us this evening. I'm going to do my best to be able to get those going so that you guys can call in. But in the meantime, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can submit a comment, and we have plenty of them already. We're going to do our best to show everything and be able to answer any questions that you guys have as well. Again, Perry Orth will be hopping on with us momentarily. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about the offense. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about just the preparation as to why South Carolina looked just as flat as they did. Now, look, and I said this during the game, the defense did a good job in the second half. All right. I understand they looked like garbage in the first half. Let's just put it as blatant as possible. They looked awful in the first half, but they did everything that you could have asked for after having such a slow start defensively to give you an opportunity to still be in this game. The bottom line is the offense just struggled, and not having Marshawn Lloyd out there, you could just see the difference. I'm not saying that if Lloyd was 100% healthy tonight, that would have made the difference tonight. And regardless if Lloyd was healthy or not, the offense shouldn't just rely on one player. I'm sorry. The offense shouldn't rely on one player. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And fortunately for South Carolina, what we've also seen, we've seen special teams, we've seen defense step up, and they've bailed out the offense at times. Or they've put them in a good field position to be able to capitalize, whether it be in field goals, whether it be some touchdowns, whether it be scoring on special teams or defense. Like we saw last week with the kickoff return. That wasn't the case tonight. And again, it's not trying to excuse the defensive performance in the first half by any means, but there's going to be nights where your defense is just not going to have the best night, or at least just not the best half. And that was the case tonight. What needs to happen? Well, you need to play complementary football. And the offense they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to pick up the defense. Again, defense and special teams, we've seen this over the course of the year. We've seen this during that 4-game winning streak where the offense just was not clicking. They weren't able to get things going, maybe in a manner in which it was just, consistency was there. And the defense and special teams, because of the way they played, it put USC in a good position to be able to win some of those games. That wasn't the case tonight. You can't always fall back on the defense and special teams to pick you up because, like we saw tonight, you're not going to be able to go too far, and especially in league play. Joining us right now is former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth. Perry, just talking about it momentarily before you just joined us. Look, there's a lot to talk about the offense. We will get into it. The defense, they had a rough start in the first half. They did everything they could to give you an opportunity to win this game. The way they performed in the second half, 6 points allowed. Obviously, that missed field goal earlier, that was a sudden change situation, but 50-yard field goal you gave up. They did everything they could. Now, granted, okay, some of those third down situations you would have liked to have been able to get off the field, and they didn't. But they made corrections at halftime. Offensively, we were just waiting. Maybe that touchdown at the end, right? The 2-for-1 special. You score right before the half. You get the ball to start the second half. Maybe this is where the momentum will start to swing in USC's favor. It just didn't. And after that touchdown, it seems like from any rhythm standpoint, any type of momentum standpoint, it just never swayed in USC's favor.
Yeah. We, we struggled all day offensively. Even on our touchdown drive was penalty ridden. I don't entirely agree, just being a football fan, with some of the calls the refs made, and they were on our behalf. Some of the pass interference calls I thought were ticky-tack. It was a disappointing game, especially the way we've played the last couple of weeks. But, you got to get back to the drawing board. Unfortunately, they're a good team. They're starting to come on strong, and they played Florida tough. They beat Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago, kind of starting to turn the corner as a team. just didn't look like offensively our guys were in it. Offensive line was just beat all day. We could not block in the run game, got pass happy there towards the end, and we couldn't pass protect. And I don't care how good your skill players are. When you can't block, you can't move the football. Defense played well. This week we weren't spotted 17 points, and when that doesn't happen, it can be a tough deal. So.
And the ironic part about everything too is, we had Mike Matulis on earlier this week for Mixing the Water Monday, and we were talking about just the way the offensive line has grown this year. I mean, you look at the first 2 games of the season, I think they gave up 9 sacks. Even in that Georgia game after that, they were able to really get things going from a blocking standpoint. They were able to get a good push up front, which we've seen obviously in the run game and how that's just evolved after the first 3 games of the year. That's been one of the strong points. And I know there's going to be some people that they'll say, okay, the competition, they went up against A&M in Kentucky. Okay, the bottom line is tonight they just got it handed to them. And it was disappointing to see because all week, Perry, I had talked about how stingy, I think that's the word I kept using over and over, how stingy this Missouri defense was going to be. They're a team that ranks practically in the top 40 for a lot of statistical categories for defense. And we saw that tonight. We saw there's a reason why. And as you mentioned before, some of those losses they had this season, their record is very misleading. Very misleading. Yes. They've lost 3 games by 7 points or less. We saw what happened in that overtime game. I believe it was against Auburn. I could be wrong there, Auburn. And the guy gave the game away literally by being a little too premature at the celebration. They would have won that game. So, I mean, look, I know a lot of people are going to want to talk about the offense. I don't know if there's anywhere in particular you want to start tonight. If you do want to talk about the I mean, it's kind of like the elephant in the room.
I mean, I think, I'll just cut you off here and just tell you point blank. I mean, it all starts up front, Mike. And when you can't run block at all, and then you're forced into becoming one-dimensional, and you don't pass protect very well, it's going to be difficult. And I think that's why you saw a lot of quick throws and screens again. And Missouri just had a phenomenal plan. I went to the game for the first half, and then we ended up coming back home to watch the second half. And there were a couple third downs where Missouri, you could just tell they had schemed up specific pressures to put our protection in a very vulnerable situation. And we didn't have an answer for it. We couldn't get the ball out on 3rd and +6 where you can't really throw those quick screens. But man, I'll tell you, looking at Coach Beamer's body language on the sideline after the game, he just looked obviously very frustrated. You look at the way the defense played, special teams. I mean, there were no huge plays, special teams. I think everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. Defensively, probably could have done a few better things here and there, but you give up 23 points, and you really should be in it, getting the ball back late with a chance to win. And we just couldn't get out of our own way today offensively.
And I think, look, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the game, and I know it's a long game, right? And that's why there's some people, when I have given praise tonight to the defense, they're like, well, first half. No one's saying that the first half didn't happen. Yeah. But what are they supposed to do, right? Down what? It was 17 points in the first half. What are they supposed to do? Get their ball and go home? I mean, they did everything that they needed to put you in a situation to be able to compete in this game in the second half. That doesn't excuse the poor performance in the first half. That doesn't excuse the struggles on the perimeter, which reminded me of the first couple of weeks, something that we talked about a lot, which was struggling to get off the blocks on the outside, looking like it's Friday night at the prom, and you're dancing out there with the receivers. That happened earlier in the game. They made adjustments. There's going to be a lot of there's a bunch of questions too that I want to get to, because I know there's some people, again, we're having some issues with the phones tonight. Intern Joe is not with us, so I'm going to try to do my best to be able to get that going but I don't want to slow the show down. So, if you want to submit something in, submit something in. I promise you, this has nothing to do with the fact win or lose. I mean, you could talk to Perry. We just weren't sure if we were going to have the phones tonight. It has nothing to do with the fact they lost, but I'm hoping to get that up. Perry, offensively, though, and this is what I was saying at the beginning tonight. I liked that first series. I liked what they were doing. I liked the run to Lloyd, a little play action pass rollout, getting it to Stogner, and then another run. And then obviously they had another one to Juju. And that's when things kind of slow down a little bit, right? You're behind the sticks now, third down, things don't go well. So I liked being able to run the ball in the tight ends. And then Missouri goes down and scores. It seemed like at that point, that's where everything changed. Now, you understand this, and the reason why I'm trying to set this all up, Perry, is because I know there's a lot of people that are listening have not been fans of the scripted plays, okay? And I'm bringing that up because that wasn't the issue early on, the scripted plays. What just happens at that point? I mean, you're doing good things. Is it more so – that second series,
so I'll tell you that when you script plays like that, really why you script them is to get into a function and a flow of the game, get a feel for how the defense is going to play to some of the formations that you're seeing, and then you should open it up and get into a flow and then into a rhythm of the game. I've already said it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but we can point the blame at the play calling. You can point the blame at whatever you want, but we got whipped up front today. That was just the big thing that I saw was the glaring, obvious thing, and the issue that just continued to make itself known. Looking here at the stats, 32 rush yards. That ain't gonna cut it, brother. Marshawn Lloyd, 7 carries for 30 yards. No reason in the world Marshawn Lloyd should have had 7 carries. So, that's an easy point at the offense.
Perry, I will say this. He was I don't know if you had a chance to see it from the stands. He was banged up. He was limited in practice this week. Yep. And, I just bring that up because I think it just goes back to kind of some of the things we've talked about, which is you can't – your offense just can't revolve around one person, because when it does, look what happens tonight when he's not 100%. And you said 32 yards. That's pretty much what they had at halftime. They weren't able to do anything rushing in the second half. And obviously a lot of that had to do with the fact that, two things. One, they're playing from behind, which if you're a running team and you play from behind, it changes everything. We go west for the 49ers last week against the Chiefs. But again, with Lloyd being hurt and just banged up, you saw the impact with him not being on the field to make an impact.
Yeah, he's obviously a difference maker, and when you, like you said, when that difference maker's limited, it hurts your offense. But there's too many other playmakers around our offense to be limited to just one running back. And for me, what it really, just because I don't know the ins and the outs of what we do exactly schematically, but we have to find a way to protect better. We've got to find a way to run the football even when our bell cow is not in. Just looking at some of these comments that are coming in, they're right. Missouri just controlled the line of scrimmage, and it's hard. And when you do that, you've got to throw quick passes. And Missouri's secondary really was playing on their toes tonight versus on their heels. I don't think that they were ever threatened with anything over their head. And, eventually you've got to make the attempt to take the top off just to loosen them up a bit. I thought we did that on the drive that we scored in the half. We pushed the ball, got a couple penalties that maybe shouldn't have been, but when you throw in those one-on-one shots, more times than not, you're going to get some good calls. But after that, we could not get out of our own way. I would have liked to have seen some more of that vertical pass game. But then again, I don't exactly know if we had game plan for things like that. But when your best player is out, limited, and you don't block very well, I don't care who you play. Missouri, I'll tell you, Missouri's coming on strong. But I'll tell you too now, not to look ahead or to here comes the doom and gloom type of deal, but Vanderbilt can play some good defense too now. Vanderbilt was in a dogfight with Missouri too, so we've got to we've got to figure it out quickly if we want to go up and win a ball game next week, because that's a pivotal game when you start looking at the back half of the season with Tennessee and Clemson, and Florida played Georgia pretty good today. Next week is a huge game for us.
So Barry, I'm going to go back to some of the questions that people have been sending on in. Taylor mentioned, now can we please start talking about actually firing sack? Can we can't be calling screens 9% of the time? I want to look at that second part of that question, Perry, especially. We'll talk about, look, I know a lot of people want to talk about SAT. We're not going to dodge that altogether, but there's other things that we want to mention first before we get to that. Okay.
Yep.
You mentioned some of the things from an offensive standpoint that weren't working. You mentioned some of the push, not being able to get things going from a running standpoint, and then not having Lloyd. And as you know, screen game, swing passes, that's all an extension of the run game.
Yep.
I mean, I understand sometimes, third down, and it's like, I'm making this up. I'm making it up. I think there was a scenario, it was 3rd and 12 or, 3rd and 16, whatever the case may be, and they're doing screen passes. Whether it be that situation in particular or just in a broader sense, a lot of the screens tonight. Can you make sense of that for some people that probably watched that tonight and they wanted to get their head and put it through a wall?
Yeah, well, I think what it stems from the fact that we haven't been able to protect. So we've got to get the ball out of our hands quick. And then on the flip side, it also goes to what I said with Missouri's secondary playing on their toes. Well, screens, you have to invite the defensive line in, which we did, which is great because they were pinning their ears back and coming. But if we're not blocking well on the perimeter and the guys in the secondary are coming downhill quickly, throwing those tunnel screens and throwing those quick now routes, if you'll call it that, they don't work because there's no separation. And that you've got to be able to attempt to push the ball vertically down the field to loosen them up, get those guys playing on their heels to then spit the ball out to throw the quick screen. I throw screens all the time with in our offense. They're great plays, but you've got to attempt, whether you hit them or not, you've got to attempt to throw the ball vertically to help in the screen game. And I know you're like, well, if you can't block, you can't do it. You can still slide protect and do different things to make sure that you can at least get the pass off to give your guys an opportunity to make a one-on-one catch.
What would you have to say about the pro style offense? I know Pete's asking that, and I know some people look. I've said this before. I said this going back to the bye week. I said this, this past week. I do feel like at some point, and I've said at times that certainly there's a lot of flaws with the offense. I do feel like at times, especially in the second half, whether it be against A&M, whether it be against Kentucky, you start to see why Sat's calling certain plays. And then there's sometimes you look at it, and then just like any offensive coordinator, whether it be a media member or a fan or just someone watching the game, you're like, what the hell are they doing? That happens every week. I bring that up, though, Perry, because, kind of like a relationship, sometimes you could be dating a girl who is just absolutely incredible. She's an awesome girl. And then over a period of time, you just realize it's just not working. I bring that up because I do feel like there are certain things that Sat's trying to do, and you can see why he's doing it. It's just not working. From a pro-style offense, do you feel like that is the best fit for this team? And if it's not the best fit, do you think it can still be successful? Because, look, the reality is this. I know there's some people that want to see a change at offensive coordinator. Maybe you don't agree with me, Perry, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. They just had a 4-game winning streak, okay?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that stuff? Most likely that's happening at the end of the year. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, and to answer everybody's questions, because I've heard that pro style thing doesn't work. I disagree. I don't think that it's necessarily a style of offense. It's kind of like, like they told me in sales school, it's like the product that you sell. People in the past or people currently, they sell that product a lot, right? You're still selling the same product, right? So, for instance, Steve Sarkisian at Texas is running a pro style offense. right? It's not the style of offense, right? There's so many other factors into it. It's the execution of the players, the quality of players, the timing of the calls, and then ultimately, how do you get all of that to mesh together to run an offense as a cohesive unit to move the football against a defense who is scheming to help stop what you're trying to accomplish. Like, I mean, you turn on the Kentucky Tennessee game, right? Kentucky's a little bit more Tennessee's a bit more spread the field and rip down the field. But you look at offenses like Steve Sarkisian at Texas. They're pro style. They formation people a lot. They do a lot of smoke and mirrors. But at the end of the day, the plays are still the same plays. We've got to find a way to execute better from a personnel standpoint. But then also, you take into consideration, obviously, some of those plays you'd probably like to have back. So we'll I hope that we can get it resolved. Obviously, we did some really good things over the last couple of weeks, so hopefully we can get it turned around here for the Vanderbilt game. And listen, I see these comments coming in. I'm not going to sit here and talk about our players nor the coordinator. So if you're looking for me to do that, then probably you might not want to listen to the show.
And again, I've said this before. The offensive line has not been the issue this year. They had a bad night. They had a really bad night. It was ugly. Okay, I'll say it for. And Perry has said it. He's just not going to be saying this player, that player. You don't have to. You can just see it just as a unit. The offensive line had a bad night. The offense as a whole. I mean, there were times where, and Perry, you can cut me off if I'm wrong because it is difficult without knowing what the exact play where it was. But there were times too where I'm sure Rattler missed a guy coming off the edge. I think we saw that at the beginning of the game. And that's not defending the offensive line. Like I just said, the offensive line had a bad night, but it was the offense as a whole. We could talk about the play call, or we could talk about the play as a whole. They had a bad night. But I bring that up because worst we've had in years. Did you see where the offensive line was a year ago? Did you look at, and again, that's not to say the offensive line, in terms of trying to put it where it's like, okay, we have all Americans across the board. But again, a couple of weeks ago, you have a guy like Wynn, who was named the SEC Player of the Week. I mean, Offensive Lineman Player of the Week. That doesn't happen unless the whole offensive line has a good game. So again, let's not sit here and say, okay, the offensive line's the worst. No, they had an awful night, but they've been making improvements the last couple of weeks. It was bad at the beginning of the year. Okay. They've made improvements. I just think it's one game. Okay. It's one freaking game. I'm not saying that, okay, just one game, put it behind them. No, there's a lot to be concerned about right now deep in the season, no question. But at the same time, too, you're sitting here 5-3. You're sitting here year 2 of a new coach who 23 months ago you were 2-5 without a head coach. Okay, so just put things into perspective. It's okay to say, hey, look, the offense right now, the play calling, whatever you want to complain about, because you have the right to do that. It's okay to say that. But let's keep perspective here. I'm not trying to say that everything's sunshine and rainbows because it certainly isn't. And we saw that tonight on the field.
Yeah, no, it's definitely obviously, what's funny and I've learned is even as a player, now as a fan, and now as a coach, you can never get too high with the wins and never too low with the losses. And, we fluctuate as a fan base like a roller coaster. And, last week was not the week to get overly excited about the win. This is not the week to get overly down about the loss. I think that there's still a lot out there for us, and everything that we probably expected from this team is still out there to be accomplished. But we have to play better offensively. Even last week, we really didn't statistically put up what we're probably capable of. And right now we've got to get back to the drum board, get back to what we do well, and execute better. Ultimately it's at the end of the day, and people may not want to hear this, but it's just a true statement as you ever heard, but it's still a player's game. And here's a great example. Last night, I had just a horrific play call in our game. Just set my quarterback to get absolutely blasted, rolling out into pressure. Just a terrible call. And the kid made the guy miss, took off up in the pocket and hit the guy in the back of the end zone on a scramble play for a touchdown. And I just pulled my headset down, told Corey Helms, our head coach, and just said, it's just so true, man. It's a player's game. And at the end of the day, the kids got to go out there and make the plays to win. And that's not putting all the blame on the kids, but it is. The game is won and lost by the players' execution. Now the coaches obviously play a pivotal role, but we've got to. I think that some of the plays are there. I just think that Missouri had a great plan, and from an offensive standpoint, we really just we got whipped up front tonight.
Again, South Carolina loses to Missouri tonight, snapping their 4-game winning streak and falling now to 5-3 on the year. Intern Joe is off tonight, so we will be taking a majority of our messages to the comments section. Apologize for the inconvenience with the phone, but probably saving some people out there because I think we're all going to understand what's going to be said regardless. Okay, look, I understand the frustration from the offensive coordinator standpoint, and we could sit here all night and talk about, okay, should Stat be here? Should Stat not? But I'm not going to sit here and do a lot of hypotheticals because the reality is he's still going to be here. Like I don't imagine waking up tomorrow or waking up on Monday in South Carolina parts ways with that Stat right now. If it does, I'll raise my hand. I'll say I was the first one to be wrong. With the way this season has gone, okay, in terms of a team standpoint, it's just not going to happen. If it happens, it would be at the end of the season. Could happen before the bowl game if South Carolina is able to get one more win. So I'm not saying that because I don't want to talk about it. It's there, okay? You saw it tonight. You've seen it throughout the rest of the season, but tonight, especially after everything that you've been able to accomplish this year, 5-2, ranked at home, an opportunity to become bowl eligible before the end of October, okay? We know that. We saw it tonight. Instead of sitting there and talking about something that is not going to happen, again, if it does happen before the end of the season, I will put my hand up and say I was dead wrong, okay? But instead of wasting our time talking about something that very likely is not going to happen, where does South Carolina go from here, Perry? What do they need to do? Because, look, I know that, and I'm looking at some of these comments, and I agree with some people, okay? I agree. There was a slant play. I think it was, 2nd and 10, and then it was a 5-yard slant in the goal line that resulted in a touchdown. All right. Yep. I will say this. There has been slants this year. It's just not as prominent because of two things. One, sometimes they're just not making the throws. Two, guys aren't getting open. That's not saying they're doing enough of slants. I know, but I'm just bringing up that play in particular, right? Because I know slant. Okay. Slant aside. What the heck does this offense need to do, Perry? Because I know there's a lot of people that are frustrated with the offensive coordinator. Again, it's not going to happen right now. It's just not. So what do they do to work with what they have right now so they can bounce back against Vandy? And then obviously they have to take on Florida in the Swamp and just try to do what they can to be able to bounce back after a very disappointing night.
So here's what you do, okay? You take the next 24 hours, and you sit there and you rot a little bit. You get upset. You get angry. Take a deep breath about, I don't know, maybe tomorrow afternoon about 5 o'clock. You start gearing up for Vanderbilt, and you watch the film on Vanderbilt. And you put in plays that beat what Vanderbilt does defensively. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then Monday through Thursday, you're going to rep those plays until the guys have it down pat. You're going to make it simple so they can execute and they feel comfortable with the game plan ahead. And then you get out there and you cut that thing loose and you let those kids go out and play football. I know that sounds very elementary and sounds kind of like your generic coach's speech, but the reality is that your players are never going to execute to the level that they're capable of doing unless they feel comfortable running the plays that are called. And they've had success running the plays that are called. Well, where do you develop that success, especially if it's a new play? Well, it starts in practice, and you have to rep it, 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 and you got to watch film on it, and you got to make sure that every single play that is called, your QB and your offense should have a plan going into each and every single play. And if they don't have a plan, right, they used to tell us all the time, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And right now, we need to get back to the drawing board, circle the wagons, and and make sure that we are all working together as a cohesive unit to run the game plan and get ready for the execution that's needed, because there isn't that's great. Let's throw a slant route. Okay, you make a 15-yard catch and they start playing man coverage inside. What the hell are you going to do now? Okay, slant routes are done. So it's not a route. It's not a play. It's not even a series of plays, because that's great. You had a great series of plays. You got 7 points. Right? Great job. How do you replicate that? How do you do it over and over and over and over again? Well, it's through positive repetition, right? It's through running plays that kids are comfortable with doing. And then the other thing too is that, I think I've said this before this year, is that you can run the same plays out of different formations, right? So it looks completely different to the defense, but from an offensive standpoint, it's still the same stuff, whether you're running it out of 12 personnel, 10 personnel, 11 personnel, 21. Doesn't matter. Power is still power. How can you show them one thing but do something else, right? Because when you're doing that, your team, your players, your quarterback, offensive line, running backs, they're comfortable with the plays that are called. But from a defensive standpoint, they are uneasy because you line up in a different formation and it looks completely different, and then bam, here you go. But I still am under the impression of it's all about repetition. How many positive reps can you get in a row to have the kids continue to get positive reps to gain confidence so they can go out and execute on the Saturday afternoons, and I know, our guys, our coaches completely understand that. We just got to go out and execute at the end of the day. And, tonight we didn't do that, and we made it very obvious. And, it's easy to point the blame at offensive coordinator and quarterback. But there's more to it than just those two guys. It's kind of the whole holistic view.
So looking at some of these comments, and again, if you guys have a question, just a comment, a concern, whatever, submit it, whether you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Again, we're having some issues tonight with the phone. Intern Joe is not with us this evening. He's doing all right. He'll be back with us soon. But, look, bottom line is this. It's awful. It was an awful showing tonight, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's one game. It's one game. You still have an opportunity to become bowl eligible. Obviously, and like Perry said, Vandy did a good job against Mizzou. So you certainly can't overlook Vandy. On top of the fact that it just feels like, and Perry, you remember from your fifth year at South Carolina, Muschamp's first game, it just seems like anytime there's a night game in Vandy, those games sometimes come right down to the wire. So you got Vandy, you got Florida, and then obviously you got a very good Tennessee team and a very good Clemson team on top of that. So look, that's what's back. That's what's left on the schedule. Obviously, the focus is just going to be on Vandy right now. I will say this, though, Perry, looking at some of these comments, and we could hit on some of these. We don't have to spend a lot of time, Perry. Could just be a quick thought, so we can get to a lot of these. You can even hear Perry's dog's not happy tonight. That's how upset. Perry's dog's watching in the other room. He's upset that he can't call in. Why didn't we give Doty a chance to play? At any point, did you think that it could have been a good idea to give Doty an opportunity?
Yeah, I think maybe. I think that I think we're probably in a position of the season where I don't know if it would. I don't think it would hurt to give him an opportunity. I could probably look it up in a minute. But our stats, or Spencer's stats. Obviously, the quarterback is more than just statistic. The quarterback position, but I don't think that we have gotten the production from that position that maybe we had all anticipated. Again, there's a trillion reasons as to why that might be. I don't think that you'll see that kind of switch, barring some crazy play or injury here in the next week. I don't know if changing the quarterback position or changing the quarterback is going to make that big of a difference in the offense. And that's not limiting what Luke's capable of. That's more of just the offense as a whole. I've
And
been
Perry,
reading
just
these
for us to
comments.
be on the same page, and I just want to make sure because there's some people that'll be listening, being like, I'm sure some want to see a switch. I'm talking about a switch in the game. I know people hate when you do comparisons to Clemson, but kind of like what we saw, right? DJ Uiagalelei, he was playing pretty well for a period of time. Had a couple good games in a row. In Clemson needed a spark against Syracuse, and in came Cade, and did they win the game because of the quarterback? No, but it gave them that shot. So, I don't know if sometimes, you've been in situations like that where it's not necessarily the quarterback. Sometimes it is. And you
Yeah.
just need a shot.
Well, it really depends upon how Luke is practicing and how comfortable they feel to put him out there. And that's something that we can't answer. The unfortunate reality is we can't answer that. Sorry to change gears on you here. I do have a question. Where was Jaheim Bell? Was he hurt tonight?
You and a lot of other Gamecock fans would like to know that. And I know earlier in the week, Marcus
But was he
Satterfield
hurt?
mentioned, not to my knowledge. And earlier in the week, Satterfield mentioned that, if he could get the ball to him 20 times a game, I'm paraphrasing, but I believe that was the number that he mentioned, then he would. I don't know. I did say this, the beginning of the season, it was evident that they wanted to get him the ball. And there were some issues they were working through, whether it be just the rapport with the quarterback and the offensive line and just that timing that we talk about, right? When you step up in the pocket, when you get outside of the pocket.
Yeah.
And it felt like one of the reasons why they were handing the ball off to Bell is because they wanted to get the ball to their playmaker. And what's the easiest way to get the ball to your playmaker? Well, it goes all the way back to youth football. Just hand him the friggin' ball. So we saw that at the beginning of the year, right? And then obviously as the season went on, it's like, all right, we got to find ways to get him the ball out in space. I know it wasn't a lot last week against A&M, but we saw him have a couple opportunities with the passes out in the flats, down the field. Saw that with Juice, Stogner. I felt like they used him a little bit more last week, and they were trying to get him going tonight. But
yeah,
look, Bell is too talented of a player, and this is the way. You would be able to answer this better than me, Barry, because I think a lot of people are looking at this and they're saying, okay, there's a guy named Brock over in Georgia, and he's one of the most talented tight ends in the country. And I'm not trying to compare players, but there's a lot of people that probably think, okay, you see what Brock's doing in Georgia. Why can't Bell do that at South Carolina? When you have a talented guy, right? And I'm sure more so at halftime, but correct me or intervene whenever you want. If at halftime you're looking at the stat sheet and you realize Bell doesn't have the ball, what's the first thing that you should do? Should be some type of quick pass to him just to get him going. So I don't know if you can make sense of it because there's a lot of people that want to know, why isn't Bell getting the ball? Well, we don't know that. We don't know what that reason is. So instead of trying to answer a question that we don't know, how can they get him the ball? What would you do differently, Perry, based on what you've seen tonight and seen throughout the course of the season?
One thing that I really like that's a great play for tight ends are shallow crossing routes. I think that tight ends can get lost running across the field. Linebackers are so keyed on getting into their zone, but watching the eyes of the quarterback, that guys running across the field, they can lose eye discipline and spit out into the flat. And next thing you know, the tight ends are just lost, and now they're catching and turning up the field. And I've seen us do that with Bell before. The other thing too is that you can start him inside and motion him out and get him singled on a linebacker or a safety to get that matchup that you're looking for. I haven't seen that as much. The other thing too that you can do is you can jet motion that tight end and give him the ball as well and get him out running on the perimeter. I mean, there's numerous ways to do it. I'm not sitting here saying, I mean, they know how to get him the ball. But there had to have been something in practice that we're just missing. There's no way in heaven that you don't get him the ball. So I do like the comment about the stash. I had to rock it for the big game last night over at Cardinal Newman. So
Yeah, and Paul, and I said this earlier. No, I don't think you got to look, okay? Again, I'm not saying there's offensive line there's all Americans across the board up front, but you don't get a player of the game or offensive lineman of the game against Kentucky. I think it was the Kentucky game. If you're not having a unit that's blocking. That's not to say tonight was awful. The offensive line struggled tonight, okay? It's okay to look at the stretch that they've had and say, you know what? The offensive line is doing a pretty good job. I mean, they were averaging almost 200 yards a game, for crying out loud, or at least north of 175, 180. So again, and I know some people are going to be like, well, Rattler is under pressure sometimes. You realize a lot of the plays that they've been designing. And again, I can't look at tonight. They played awful, okay? They played awful.
Yeah.
This is what happens sometimes. You look at a game tonight and you instantly feel like that's what it's been like the course of the season. They have been playing much better in the offensive line over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've been running
better compared to what we saw last year.
We've been running the ball so well, man, that I was floored tonight to see the production in the run game that we did not have tonight. We've just, after the Georgia game, everybody ripped Satterfield for not having an identity. And basically he said he wanted to come out and run, or either he or Coach Beamer or somebody said something about running the ball. And they made it a point of emphasis from Charlotte to South Carolina State to Kentucky to last week. We're going to get out there and we're going to run the football. And tonight we did to an extent, but also think that we played from behind the sticks a lot. I think some of the penalties really hurt us too. I'll tell you, as somebody that, is coaching at the high school level, when you get behind the sticks, when I say behind the sticks, anything over than 10 yards to gain, it is really, really hard to get a first down, just because, you're banking on you hitting a big run play or having a big 15-yard completion. And, those don't happen each and every time you have the football. So it's difficult. And we consistently found ourselves behind the sticks. And, you saw Spencer scrambling a lot. And I think that just kind of goes back to what we're saying about, we didn't protect well. We were a little outmatched I think for what our guys brought to the table.
And Bird 2 Fly and everyone else, let it loose. I mean, this is your pro team. For a lot of people, this is your pro team. And I say that because obviously with me covering the Patriots up here, I love it. Okay. I hate that we're sitting here and this is the reason why we're saying let it rip, because when you're high, when you're low, whatever the case may be, let it fly. Let it fly. Bottom line tonight was South Carolina, and it goes back to something I do want to bring up. And I saw it in the comment section. I'm trying to go through it. Where was it here? Talking about did we overlook Missouri due to recent success in previous games? I mentioned this going into the season, that for the majority of this team, they never dealt with success. And when I say success, it's not the same type of success as Georgia or Alabama. But in recent years, for the majority of the players on that team, you probably have to go back to, and I know it's a game that people don't want to remember, but the Belk Bowl season, where they were bowl eligible and they were able to do some things, and it was good. It was good. It was a sense of where things were actually, it wasn't like those previous couple of years. So then you have last season, right? You have last season. And you're able to get to a bowl game. You're able to win. You get Spencer Rattler in the transfer portal, Austin Stogner, Juice Wells, right? You keep going down the list. Christian Bale-Smith, Bonnie Reed. You're starting to do things now that have a lot of people excited. Well, it comes back on the players now to having to get back to, right, even keel. And being able to have that bye week after that Kentucky win before playing A&M, I felt like that was the biggest thing in the world, because I don't know if they beat A&M. I don't. And I think someone else brought it up a little bit earlier, the defense and special teams, 1,000%. I said this before even going into this week's game, Barry, which was USC easily going into this week's game before tonight's contest, easily could have been 3-5 because of what your special teams did, right? You mentioned the A&M game. You could talk about even Georgia State. They don't block those two kicks. Mitch Jeter doesn't make 2 50-yard field goals, a guy that's kicking his first 2 field goals of his collegiate career, South Carolina probably doesn't win that game. Now, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of what ifs and popsicle headaches and scenario. Bottom line is 5-2 going into tonight. You had a golden opportunity. And we've seen this in the past, right? You did some good things last week against A&M, okay? It's being able to use that momentum and to be able to get over that hurdle. I felt like that's something over the last couple years, Perry, during my going back to even 2016. I feel like that's been something that South Carolina has struggled with when they have that momentum, maybe outside of that Outback Bowl season, Hayden's last year. They've struggled with being able to carry that momentum into that next game.
Man, I'll tell you, even that year, shoot, we go 2-0
and
Kentucky. I mean, it's something that we just, for whatever reason, we can't take the next step. I'll tell you though, the positive momentum overall around the program is heading in that direction. And I don't think that the kids or the team was not prepared because, outside of a couple of the big plays, Missouri, they really didn't do a whole lot offensively. We bent a little bit, didn't break. You give up 23 points, you should win that game. You should at least be having the ball late in the game to make a drive, to tie it up, to take the lead, or whatever. And we just didn't do that. I don't think that I'm not going to sit here and say we were out coached. I don't think I believe that. I think that Missouri did some good things offensively early to kind of help get them that early lead, but defense settled in. Special teams was fine. We just didn't have the big play to kind of spark the momentum to get us kind of turning a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I will say this though, Perry, right? I know we really haven't talked about the defense, and I'm not trying to let them off the hook because, again, they didn't show up to start. They did not show up to start. It was evident. I mentioned all week, but especially on Thursday on Gamecock Central's Quick Slants that I do weekly, that this was going to be a low-scoring game. And give Missouri's offense a lot of credit. They came out flying. They were able to score early. And after getting some things going offensively, that's when South Carolina's defense was able to get back into where they needed to be. I don't know if I'm assuming that they were able to see something in the tape that gave them some type of advantage because South Carolina made adjustments. They made adjustments and they put themselves in a situation to be able to make it somewhat of a game in the second half. But as we know, the offense wasn't able to get going. I know that there's, again, if you're just joining us right now, South Carolina lost tonight against Missouri. Look, there's going to be a lot of people questioning the play calling, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback. It happens every freaking year, regardless of where you are when things are going bad. Regardless if it's a 4-game winning streak and you have the type of showing that you had tonight. And we know that over the last couple of weeks, the defense and special teams has contributed to a lot of the success. There's no question about that. But if you're looking for a play caller to get fired right now, it's just not going to happen. And if it does happen, I'll raise my hand and say I was dead wrong. It's just not going to happen. Barry, going back to some of these questions, here, I do want to try to see. I know some people, okay, any chance Kitchen call some plays the next week. I don't know what Beamer can do from an offensive standpoint. You've been in situations like this where, there's going to be a lot of outside noise. Sometimes there's really, I wouldn't say nothing going on the inside, but it's not going to be as loud internally as it is on the outside, right? I'm sure it is getting a little bit louder over there because, again, like we mentioned, the defense, special teams, it has played to a lot of the success that this team has had this season.
Yeah.
You're not going to change the playbook in the middle of the year. You're not going to get rid of a play caller and say, hey, we're going to bring this guy in and we're going to change. It's just not going to happen. If that were to happen, that would happen before a bowl game. So I say that because whether it be Kitchens, whether it just be Beamer, if you're Beamer right now, what can you do to be able to get a spark under this offense? I'm sure we all know the coaches meet practically every day and they're trying to figure things out. But after watching what you saw tonight, what would be something that you would do in trying to just be able to get this thing going? Because there's way too many talented guys on offense for this not to be corrected soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it goes back to is you can tell that we've run the football well. Me personally, I would like to see, obviously we all would like to see the offensive line play better. I'd like to see us move the pocket well, a little bit more. I think that Rattler does a good job when you move the pocket. You kind of give him closed reads in the sense of it's either here or you run, get him into the rhythm of the game. I'm a big 3-by-1 guy. What that means, I like putting 3 receivers to one, just because a lot of times you get numbers to either run the football or throw quick kind of, not bubble screens, but bubble routes where you've got numbers to get a hat on a hat and maybe get a play. Very similar to what Missouri was doing tonight. I think that we've done a really good job of that. It was funny. I was telling my wife this. This past week was the first time in years that I've actually went back and watched a South Carolina game, and not to study them, just to watch it and like relive the hype around the stadium and the game and the kickoff return and the whole deal. We ran a lot of similar plays this week as we did last week, and I feel like Missouri just seemed to be ready. I personally would like to see a little bit more vertical passing game, not just bombs away. And then going back, I really like those crossing routes. I love the drag routes. I think that they get lost coming across the field, sending people deep and then running them underneath. I think it really, really puts people in a bind defensively, because it's like, hey, we either got to come down and cover them, leaving the deep ones open, or we got to turn and run to cover the deep ball. And here comes the shallow cross going right underneath it, and bang, and here you go. So that might be that might be an opportunity for us to take a shot at. But ultimately, like, we've got to run the football. I don't care if Marshawn Lloyd's out. We've got plenty of other capable backs that should be able to know what to do and make plays and really do better than what we've done. I'll tell you though, let's not tuck our tails. Missouri had a great plan. They're really good defensively. And then ultimately, you've got to get the ball into your playmakers' hands.
Yep.
And with space, not just, okay, well, here's a catch and double coverage. Now you get tackled. Like, we got to get Jaheim Bell. We got to get some of these other cats with the ball in space to go and make plays. Number 3 is obviously great with the ball. Juice Wells is great with the ball in his hand. We didn't see our cool little option reverse play that we saw versus A&M and Kentucky with Jalen Brooks. But it obviously stings when you barely crack the 200-yard mark of offense in 10 plays. I just, for the life of me, man, I was reading the comments and I was kind of thinking, like, man, did I miss something? Was he hurt? Yeah, Jaheim Bell's got to get the football. Brock Bauer, they do a great job at Georgia with him in moving him around to get the football, talking about kind of those tight end jet sweeps where you just flip them the ball. Missouri ran it a ton, but they ran it with their receivers. You can do it with the tight end too. And then when you start hitting those, you can play action pass. You saw Missouri hit a deep play on that where they kind of play action on one of those jet motions and then threw it over the top. Those are great plays. I think when you start putting defenses on their heels, play calling becomes a lot easier when you feel like they have absolutely no idea what you're about to do. That's when you're able to take the next step and step on their neck and kind of put them away. And we couldn't get ahead of the sticks. And that's where I think we fell short tonight.
I think the new, like the call-in show when it says, we're going to throw the ball to the tight end this year. I think the new thing now is quick slants. And as Perry said, it's not as simple as just do quick slants. I mean, we saw some quick slants tonight. We saw South Carolina capitalize on a couple of them. One led to a touchdown, I believe, either the next play or 2 plays after when Rattler ran it in right before the half. So, I just wanted to bring that up. Going back, there's some questions talking about, why was McDowell in the game? Marshawn Lloyd was banged up tonight. Marshawn Lloyd was banged up.
Yep.
Juju has been a nice change of pace guy. It has been disappointing not seeing him get out in space as much, because I feel like that's when he's most dangerous. I mean, we talk about screens, which I know there's a lot of people here that just want to put their head through a wall when I say the word screen, but getting him out into the flats, whether it be swing passes, whether it be screens, running off tackle. Not saying that he's not capable of running in between the tackles, but look, he's a smaller guy. And it's not saying, okay, every time he goes out there, you don't want to run it between the tackles, because that becomes kind of what we saw for a long period of time pre-Duke's Mayo Bowl with Joyner, which is anytime he went out there, everyone in the stadium knew it was going to be a run in some direction. So wanted to bring that up. That's the reason why. Trying to answer some of these questions from earlier. Bemis press conference was only 14 minutes long. Does it tend to be longer? No, after the game, that's about right. I mean, shoot, some of the pro coaches, they're even shorter. I could tell you Belichick the other night, that thing was like 6 minutes, 7 minutes. But Beamer, no. That sounds about right. Even after a win. I mean, there's some wins where Beamer will be in there for over 20-something minutes. But, I mean, and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, of course, since we're on the air right now. But, I mean, there's probably not a lot to talk about. One thing that I'm going based off of what some people are commenting on, as to why didn't Bell get the ball tonight? You got to figure that out. And I'll say this, whether it be Satterfield, whether it be Beamer, whether it be just the team as a whole. And I know we want to talk about Bell, and certainly I get that. But this could go for any of your playmakers. You're 8 games into the season now, okay?
Yep.
And this is even win or lose tonight, I would have said this, but especially after tonight, what we saw from the offense. You're too talented of a team and you're too deep into the season not to figure out what you have to do in order to get them the ball. There's no excuse. I'm not an offensive coordinator. Perry's an OC. Perry played the position. It's another good transition into our next question from Ben. Perry, you played under center, one of the greatest play callers of all time in Spurrier. You tell us, would Rattler have played that whole game? No. And Perry, not to get too deep into it.
Spurrier was also a different breed when it came to stuff like that.
Okay.
He was big time facts over feelings guy. So yeah, he wouldn't mind. I mean, you make a bad throw after a pretty decent half and your ass would have been on the bench. So, that's a different animal, but yeah, I mean, I think that, you brought up a good point earlier, Mike, talking about what Clemson had done with their freshman quarterback. I think there was a time and a place. Just based off of the rhythm and watching the game and where we were at, I don't know if there was a good time to make that switch. Especially with somebody you've been rocking with the whole season. Now, I think they should let the kids compete in practice. Looking at some of these statistics again, I want to pull them up. And I know, golly, I hate even doing this. I sound like a generic fan here when you start looking at stats, but you're what are we? So we're 5-3. You're 8 games through. You're 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I think that he does some really, really good things. Ultra talented kid. I think that he's going to continue to develop to become a better quarterback. But yeah, we've got to find a way to take the next step offensively. I think that we have gotten better. I wouldn't go on record with, and I don't mean this in a literal sense. I mean this in more of like a figure of speech. So please don't mishear me, but I wouldn't have a gun to, my foot and sit here and tell you that we have improved as an offense dramatically from week 1 to now. We've gotten better, but I wouldn't say, let me rephrase my statement. Not we've improved. I wouldn't say that we've turned the corner as an offense is what I meant to say. I mean, I think, Mike, you could agree with me there, and I think everybody on this call can agree. I think that we've won some games, but, I don't think that in those games that we've won from either Kentucky or Texas A&M that we did anything offensively where I would say, like, we're turning a leaf here, and we're making the next step as a overall program as a whole.
And I do want to, we're going to wrap things up shortly because we're about to hit that hour mark. I got to get ready to go anchor up in Boston. But I do want to share our sponsors who do a tremendous job for us at Gamecock Central, but especially with GC Live, Liberty Tax. Taxiety, you don't want it. And it seems like tax season is always right around the corner. Give our friends a call over at Liberty Tax, 803-462-5576, and they'll be able to take that taxiety away from you. Also, today's program is brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond over at the Mortgage Network. We've told you before, right? Buying a home right now, it is an absolute zoo. And not just right now, but in general, right? I mean, Perry Orth, he spoke very highly of Clint. That was the guy that he turned to be able to make that process easier. Give Clint a call, and he'll be able to help you out. I do want to bring this up. I'm very hesitant. And I do want to, if we talk about this, I want a rapid fire because there's about 30 comments. Probably not going to be able to get to all of them tonight. So if you're just joining us now, there's probably something that you're bringing up that you want answered that we answered earlier in the show. If you missed any of this, you can go back onto Gamecock Central's YouTube page. You could also go back on Twitter on Gamecock Central. You can also go to Gamecock Central's podcast page on iTunes, and you can be able to listen to this. So wherever you want, if you want to see our ugly mugs, Perry has a better one than mine. So that's a compliment there for you, Perry. There you go.
Not true, brother. Not true.
Your wife would agree. Just took her out. Happy birthday, Shannon.
Yeah.
I do want to bring this up, though. Again, I'm very hesitant to share things that parents, siblings say on social media, but I feel like it's worth bringing up. Just a little while ago, Dolores Bell, mother of Jaheim Bell, couple quote tweets. One was saying, is Jaheim Bell still on our team? Dolores responded back asking for myself. Another tweet, Beamer, Jaheim Bell's health is healthy, and we have to get him the ball more. 0 touches tonight. Many times he wasn't on the field. Dolores, same story, different week. I'm bringing this up because, again, I don't think it's right. And Dolores is an awesome lady. Phenomenal person. Okay. I'm bringing that up because not saying that that's not how Jaheim feels, but let's keep things into perspective too. Family members, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, whatever the case may be. Okay. Just because they're saying that should not all be put on Jaheim. Okay. And I think Dolores would tell you the same too. That's what's going to happen. That's going to happen with this because someone's family member said something. People are going to feel like Jaheim has to answer that. And I don't know if that will be asked directly in a press conference, but there's going to be a lot of tweets and this and that, tweeting at Jaheim or this and that. Okay. Don't do that. Okay. I would say the same thing professionally with dealing professional athletes. I have to deal with it up here. Family members has nothing to do with that. Okay. Now, is that to say that Jaheim's not feeling that way? I'm sure there's some truth in that. Yeah. But again, don't look at something what a family member is saying, even though Dolores is an amazing lady, okay? She's awesome. She wants the best for her baby. She wants Jaheim to go out there and have probably 15 catches, 200 yards receiving each night, a couple touchdowns, okay? But I felt the need to bring that up because I just have a feeling that those tweets are going to get a lot of traction over the next 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah, they will. Football is an emotional game. It's an emotional sport. This area of the country is extremely emotional. It's you got to kind of let the dust settle. Give it 24 hours. When you ask, when you answer the question, you can easily say, parents are heated. They believe in me and they want me to, get more touches as our coaches do. It just wasn't in the deck of cards this week. And, I'll tell you too, it happens all the time. Some games, your best players are going to get the ball a bajillion times, right? 10 to 15 times. Other games, not as much. Now, to have 0 targets, 0 catches, 0 anything, that is puzzling. It just leads me to believe that there was an issue this week, whether it be injury or whether it be behavioral, I don't know. But I hope that it's addressed because the last thing you want to be made out as a coach is not smart. So
wrong team. Wrong
Yeah.
team, by the way, Alex. But I'm sure Perry appreciates that.
Wrong team, but shout out to the AC Flora Falcons for a great season. I'm at Cardinal Newman now, trying to help rebuild a program. We did finish. We won last night. We're 5-5. We have now officially scored more points this season than they have in their last 3 years combined. So we're doing some really good things over there, and trying to win the first playoff game Friday night at Cardinal Newman for the first time in 4 years, and potentially tie their best record ever with a couple playoff wins. So y'all keep us in your prayers and follow Cardinal Newman football if you get a chance.
Perry, just any closing thoughts on the South Carolina team? I know we spent a lot of time on the offense tonight, and it's hard not to. And again, if you're just joining us, that's not to say that the defense was flawless by any means. We saw what happened in the first half. We saw how ugly that was. They came out and they were sleepwalking. But at the same time, too, they could have felt bad for themselves going into halftime, but that wasn't the case. They came out. They gave this team an opportunity to win the game. They held Mizzou to just 6 points in the second half. Give credit to the stand that they had on a sudden change, which was that turnover by Rattler.
Yeah.
They were fortunate to not give any points away when Mizzou's kicker missed that, but then give credit to Mizzou's kicker making that 50-yard kick later on. But just any closing remarks before we end things tonight, Perry?
Everybody, get a glass of water. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. I can assure you, Coach Beamer is doing a phenomenal job building the program. Allow him to get some of the ducks in a row. This is a great humbling and a great learning experience as a player and a coach. You always learn a heck of a lot more in a loss than you do in a win. And I fully anticipate South Carolina to come out with their piss hot, ready to win a big ball game against Vanderbilt, because, they're going to need to. But, let's wait to hear from what the coaches have to say in their weekly pressers, and what the kids have to say. To kind of get a better grip from a fan standpoint. And then you just, you readjust. We're fans. We're here to support the guys. We show up to the game, sell out, and continue to push, because we're going in the right direction.
I'll say this, though, too, about the defense. And, Danny brings this up. It's a good point. Defense was on the field a lot in the first half. Again, That's not trying to make excuses, okay? As a team, it's a team game, okay? You win, you lose. It's that simple. For the defense, though, they certainly weren't getting any help from the offense, having to go out there so much. I think it was, at one point, I think it was about 20 to 6 before that 4-minute drive, right before the half, that Mizzou had from a time of possession standpoint, as much as having the ball. So I bring that up just because you can't have that. You can't have that. It's two things, Perry, right? It's two things. One, the obvious, which is the offense isn't staying on the field long enough to give their defense a rest. And then from a defensive standpoint, even though, again, it doesn't help when your offense is just going out there 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. They weren't able to get stops when they needed to. So It didn't help. There is one thing I'm trying to find. That's why I'm trying to stay on just an extra minute. So, and here's the tweet. Here's the tweet that I've been looking for. And again, it's you put context clues together. Someone tweeted out, "Time to move on." Now, I don't know. That's Coach Ryan Bell at Columbia High School. I don't know who they're talking about directly, so I'm not going to sit here and imply, okay, it's that person, this person. Dolores Bell, quote tweeting it, saying #definitely. So bottom line is this. Again, I think Mrs. Bell is Miss Bell is a great lady. But the reason I brought all this up, though, is because it's going to be something that will be discussed. And this is something that just is an added thing to it. Why isn't Jaheim getting the ball? Why aren't some of these other players getting the ball? It's going to be something that's going to be asked tomorrow. Shane Beamer will have his weekly teleconference. But again, I don't like sharing stuff by siblings or parents or Chandler saying Jaheim's uncle, according to his later tweet. Okay, I'll take you for what it's worth for Chandler. Or you guys can take that for what it's worth. Bottom line, it's not a good look. And it's something that South Carolina is going to have to address. But I think the bottom line is this. Again, I'm bringing that up just because sure there's some truth in there as to how Jaheim feels, but don't make an assumption saying like that's exactly how they feel. Okay? I just don't think that's fair for Jaheim, and I'm sure his mother would say the same thing. But unfortunately, those are the can of worms that will happen. It happens every year. But I wanted just to bring that up just because it's something that's going to get discussed. And it's out there. And I just hope to God that people don't tweet at Jaheim and, just let him be. Let him be. Again, South Carolina loses tonight to Missouri. They fall to 5-3 on the year. They'll be in Nashville next week to take on Vandy with an opportunity to become bowl eligible. So look, disappointing loss tonight. As we've said before, regardless if you like the play calling or the play caller or even the quarterback, okay? I don't think anything's going to really change from an offensive standpoint right now, okay? Buckle down. Like Perry said, you go back, you try to simplify some things this week, you try to run a couple plays, and you make those plays that you're running, you run those so well that when you go into the game, you're feeling damn good about it. And we're going to have to wait and see what South Carolina is going to be able to do under the lights in Nashville next week. Perry, appreciate you hopping on tonight. And we'll see how things go. I know it's going to be a crazy next 24, 36 hours with some of the tweets from tonight. But again, just bringing that up because it's hard to overlook that because it's going to be something that is going to be discussed, but it shouldn't be something that everyone should put their attention to. I'm bringing it up because I don't think people it's going to be made a lot. I just want to make people aware that should not be a true representation of how Jaheim feels. If Jaheim feels like something, wait until he says something. Okay? That's all I want to say.
That's right.
Hey, went on a little rant there.
You did. I like it, though. Needed to be said. Go Gamecocks, right, everybody. We're going to do it.
And hopefully Marshawn Lloyd and everyone else that's banged up will be able to get healthy. Everyone have a good night. Be safe, and we'll do it again on Tuesday night for Talking Tuesday.